Welcome to Mr. Giant Reacts Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant, back with another reaction for you, and we continue in the series Rome's largest invasion arrives, the Dacian War, part 2. So yeah, we're gonna be going through this and checking out how this war is ended up. There's a lot of history to be learned here. Go along with me. Let's check this out. Let's YouTube and simmer and check this history out.
In 101 AD, Roman Emperor Trajan found himself at the head of the largest and most specialized invasion force Rome had ever assembled. Legions from all across the empire were closing in on Dacia, supported by sailors from the imperial fleets and the elite bodyguards of praetorians and singulares on horse and foot. As if this wasn't enough, auxiliaries and allies from across the empire flocked to the Eagle standards. Among them were Mauritanian light cavalry, Syrian archers, and Batavians, to name a few. Trajan even managed to secure the support of the nearby Yazyges and Suevi tribes, and enlisted from the latter a sizable contingent of berserkers and Germanic heavy infantry who were all ready to unleash hell upon Dacia. If you recall our video on Roman logistics, maintaining such an army would take the combined effort and collaboration of every Roman province, down to each individual citizen, in one way or another. This was the Roman Empire at its peak performance, both administratively and militarily.
Just to get the Dacians.
Trajan's invasion plan was straightforward.
Dacians.
One column from Moesia Inferior, led by their governor Liberius Maximus, would move up and pin Dacian forces in the south, while Trajan's colossal army would cross the Danube in 3 separate columns and converge on the Dacian capital of Sarmizegetusa Regia. If everything went well, Decebalus and his Dacians wouldn't know what hit them. The recent completion of the highway and canal over the Iron Gates Gorge would provide the Romans swift passage for their armies and supply lines through the mountains, instead of having to march all the way around them, which would have delayed them for several additional weeks, and time was of the essence. As soon as Trajan arrived in mid-April, he pushed his advantage and ordered all columns forward. Decebalus, not wanting to appear unreasonable, allowed a delegation of one of his Germanic allies, the Buri, to be sent to Trajan with a clear message carved in Latin on a fungus, and a rather large one at that. Cassius Dio tells us the message advised Trajan to turn back and uphold the peace, but we can imagine Trajan was not impressed. It would take more than a giant mushroom to stop Rome's largest war machine. Trajan personally commanded the main war effort in the west, first capturing the towns of Berzobis and Isis, before linking up with another column at Tibiscum. But after leaving a sizable detachment there, Trajan took an unexpected detour which proved him to be a very cautious tactician. The enormous size of Trajan's army was also its greatest weakness, as the tens of thousands of men and pack animals would require a substantial quantity of water and supplies daily, which would be impossible to supply by mere wagons and carts. Also, marching through the same choke point as the Romans did before would surely be too expected. In an attempt to satisfy both these issues, Trajan headed north towards the Muresh River, and followed it until the Dacian stronghold of Ziridava, which he quickly captured. This move opened up a faster route for the Danube fleet to continually supply them, and allowed the Romans a clear path to come at the Dacians from behind, while marching alongside a river for unlimited water supply. Trajan's advance was slow and methodical. Scouts raced ahead of the marching columns to check for ambushes, and strong contingents guarded all flanks. Meanwhile, roads and fortifications were constructed to secure the continuous flow of supply lines and communications between the Roman forces. So far, the lack of any strong Dacian opposition allowed the Romans to secure strategic rivers and valleys and open up a clear route into the Dacian heartland in the Orasti Mountains. As Trajan approached the plains of Tapai and the Dacian city of Deva, Roman scouts caught sight of a large Dacian army blocking their advance. Thus far, Decebalus's plan was not to contest the Roman advance, but to instead let them fan out and take as much land as they wanted. He rightly concluded that the need to secure and garrison his communication lines would effectively thin out Trajan's columns by the time they reached the Orasti Mountains. So Decebalus instead used his time to gather as many reinforcements as he could from his numerous allies and vassals, waiting for the right opportunity to face the Romans in the field. And this was it. Despite Trajan's preparations, Decebalus had 70,000 Dacians and allies facing off against his 50,000 Romans. The narrow plain around them was flanked by steep mountains on both sides, which prevented the Dacians from being outflanked. And if the battle still turned against him, Decebalus could order a quick retreat to the network of Dacian fortresses in the mountains and fight the Romans from the high ground. Decebalus had Trajan right where he wanted him.
I'm watching this, I'm watching all the strategy and all the stuff because they weren't just battling an enemy, they actually battling terrain. Now, I wonder if you take away all the modern technology from armies around the world now and you drop them into this battlefield, I don't think they're going to make it. I really don't. You know what I mean? Because all the modern war amenities that they have now, and they have to go back there and they have to plan and strategize how to get close to water because they can't carry the water. There's no motorized vehicles, you know what I mean? So they have to plan. No wonder wars took years down there, people be fighting for 7 years straight, because just to get reinforcements, you got to bring them in from miles and miles away, and it's by horse and carriage. There's no Humvees taking them in quick, you know what I mean? That's why wars lasted so long back then, for one. But I don't think they'll survive. They might, but can you imagine marching all that way? Some people on horses, some people by foot. They're just hiking that distance to get to where they're going, and they have to sit down and plan strategically how they're going to get supplies because they can't carry all that supplies, you know what I mean? I don't know, man.
Despite being represented as half-naked falx-wielding barbarians on Trajan's column, Dacian armies were far from it. Their army was composed of the two groups within their society. The first were the Dacian aristocrats known as Tarabostes, or sometimes Piliati, meaning hat wearers, as they could always be recognized by their unique hats. Their personal retinues and bodyguards would make up the seasoned core of every Dacian army, with some of them even comprising a high percentage of Roman deserters, mercenaries, and drill instructors, who would pass on their skill and training onto the Dacians. The second group were the free peasants, known as komatai, literally meaning those with long hair, who would have been mobilized in a similar system to that of the Roman Republic, with each soldier arming himself according to his means. In terms of armor, Dacians never shied away from adopting from their enemies and neighbors, so their heavy infantry would be equipped with chainmail, helmets, and scale armor in either Celtic, Thracian, steppe, or Roman styles, and would be supplemented with greaves and arm protection, known to the Romans as manicae. As for weaponry, the Dacians were best known for their two-handed falx swords, whose blows were capable of slicing through shields and limbs alike, while the sword's curvature allowed it to easily reach behind the shield and deliver nasty injuries to the head, neck, or shoulder. The sheer deadliness of this weapon is believed to have spurred a whole set of changes within the Roman military. Roman helmets, for example, were reinforced with crossguards on top, though experiments conducted by scholars revealed that even with this extra protection, the blunt force from a direct hit with the falx was more than enough to break the back of a legionary's neck. For this very reason, some legionaries, as depicted in the Adamclesi metapiece, chose to adopt local conical helmets much more effective at deflecting blows to the head. Finally, the use of manicae for protecting the right arm, which by the way was already uncommonly used within the legions, became far more widespread. Despite the obvious appeal of such theories, we should keep in mind that uniformity in the Roman army was never achieved, so we can only speculate how widespread these modifications were among the armies of Trajan. The double-handed falx was by far not the only weapon the Dacians used. Many would wield into battle Celtic spears, Sarmatian longswords, and even Roman gladii and spathai. Even their falx swords were depicted in one-handed and polearm variations. On the battlefield, this reflected in different combat styles of units. Dacian aristocratic heavy infantry carrying spears, javelins, swords, and shields would bear the brunt of the fighting, and were known to form coordinated shield walls, while shock units equipped with two-handed phalanxes were used to charge and breach enemy lines. But the most numerous part of Dacian armies were averagely equipped peasants. The Dacians also had a small cavalry force composed of nobility, and archers who were heavily influenced by their steppe neighbors, even displaying a preference for the use of Sarmatian composite bows. With such an army at his disposal, Decebalus could confidently challenge the Romans in the field, a feat not achieved by many. But the Dacians wouldn't face them alone. Each of Decebalus's allies would bring their unique expertise to the war. The Greeks would bring their ships, the Basterni their Germanic warriors of steppe and Thracian influence, and the Roxolani Sarmatians would bring some of the best shock cavalry in the world, which deserve a special mention, as they will very soon make an appearance in the war. While less armored than their Parthian and Armenian brethren, Sarmatians compensated with longer lances, some of them being over 4 meters long. Armed with these, they were known for delivering aggressive and repetitive cavalry charges. In 35 AD, they even managed to defeat Parthian cataphracts in hand-to-hand combat, and between the years 88 and 90 AD, they completely annihilated the entire Roman 21st Rapax Legion. After this disaster, the Romans wasted no time in copying Sarmatian tactics and experimenting with the first heavy shock cavalry units of their own.
You know, I was thinking when they were talking about all these different instruments of death that they carried. See people sitting down comparing, whatever they have to fight the war, the swords and the different, yeah, this old thing here, this is what I'm doing, that's my good old, how the men would sit around and talk about armory now, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, this one here, and this, oh yeah, old Bertha here, man, she's good, she this, that, and this. They probably sat around doing the same thing because, as much as we think that we have changed, we haven't changed. It's just the tools that have changed. And that's across the board in war, in life, and everything, you know what I mean? But for us to sit here and think that we're more advanced than they are, and they were working with what they have, we aren't advanced, we're just different. I know that might sound kind of silly when you take into consideration the way technology is, but it's just different, really. And I'm speaking strictly as far as with battles and stuff are concerned, because if you're going into battle and you're causing injury and harm to somebody, that's the main part of it as far as I'm concerned, you know what I mean? What you use to do that, we got smarter because we have better ways of doing it. No, we didn't just get smarter, we're just doing it differently. It's the same result, right?
We don't know exactly how long both sides stood staring each other down. Ancient battles would often take days or even weeks before one side decided to take the field. What we do know is that at one point, it started to rain, and storm clouds quickly covered the skies. To the Romans, this was a sign that the gods were on their side, and Trajan ordered his auxiliaries and barbarian allies in a full frontal attack. The chaos of the ensuing battle is superbly reflected on Trajan's column, which happens to be the only surviving source for the Battle of Tapae. The presence of the storm is personified as the god Jupiter, hurling lightning bolts at the Dacians. In the center, the charging auxiliaries clash with the contingent of Dacian Tarabostes and Comatai, who were armed with Roman weapons. From the foreground, we can see that the Suebi heavy infantry was spearheading the attack. The depiction of them being shirtless and wielding clubs is by no means an accurate depiction, but rather a stylistic touch to make them easily recognizable to the public. The same goes for all characters in such reliefs, so we can easily tell that the auxiliary cavalry was also unleashed. but no sign of the legionaries and their characteristic square shields, who were most likely held in reserve. On the far end of the scene, spectating from within the trees, is most likely Decebalus, who was also keeping his elite forces in reserve, with only their Draco standards being seen protruding from the leaves. Perhaps the strangest depiction in this relief is that of Roman soldiers headhunting Dacian nobles. This practice of bringing enemy heads to your commander in exchange for a sizable cash reward was very rare in the Roman army, as it was risky, threatened to break down discipline, and was outright savage. But at the Battle of Tapae, we can gather that Trajan encouraged it out of desperation and to motivate his men to fight, which is an indicator that the battle was very hard fought. Another supporting indicator is the mention that there were so many wounded on the Roman side that their medics simply ran out of bandages, and Trajan himself was said to have donated his clothes to be cut into strips to make new bandages. So don't let the Roman propaganda here fool you. The battle was fought for a very long time, with heavy casualties on both sides. Eventually, the Romans were able to gain the upper hand and started to push back the Dacian line. But their progress was indecisive. Decebalus and his army broke off and withdrew to the safety of their mountain fortresses in good order, as the rain slowed down the Roman pursuit. Trajan took advantage of the Dacian retreat and besieged the city of Deva. Deva was a large city, surrounded by walls and impressive defenses, and lined with booby traps in the form of concealed spikes, similar to the ones Caesar used at Alesia. Its defenders clearly made use of psychological warfare, displaying the heads of Roman captives mounted on spikes, along with the military standards captured 13 years ago from Domitian's fallen army. But despite its impressive defenses, the recent Roman victory and retreat of their king was a big blow to the city's morale, and they surrendered not long after, allowing Trajan to restore the fallen standards and honor of Rome's fallen heroes. Trajan then marched his army south along the river Stray, sacking and burning nearby villages, while collecting large quantities of supplies and livestock to help supplement his logistics. This effectively opened another supply route to Trajan's main army, and allowed the Romans to establish a secure foothold within Dacia. With the campaign season nearing a close, and Trajan not wanting to continue the campaign in the dead of winter, the whole army was ordered to set up winter quarters. Trajan planned to wait until next spring to scale the mountains and besiege the Dacians in their fortresses. In the meantime, he received progress reports from the other armies. The southern column faced no serious opposition and was able to secure the flank of the Roman invasion force, while Liberius and his army of Moesia Inferior managed to capture Buridava, together with a very valuable prize, Decebalus's own sister, who was later shipped to Rome. So far, the campaign was going as planned for Trajan, who had Decebalus cornered and exhausted. The king's latest embassies sent to discuss peace terms just about confirms this. But Decebalus, as we will come to learn, always had an ace up his sleeve, and now it was the king's turn to move.
I wonder if okay, what happened to the refugees and stuff that was created after those wars? You know, you always hear history being told by the great fights and you know the battles and stuff like that. But what about the people? What did they do? Did they just sit there and wait and then surrender when they come, or do they start retreating too? You know, or do they leave the cities before they come in? That's another disadvantage of back then, you know. Well, actually, it's the same thing now, because usually when they go into villages and cities, and I'm thinking of more like in Africa and stuff like that, most people don't have cars or anything, so they have to walk miles to escape the incoming forces. So I imagine there was a lot of that going on then, you know what I mean? I would like to see a history of what were since the women weren't in the battles, or that's what history tells us, we will never know. Since they weren't in the battles, what did they do? You know what I mean? Did they take the children and go into the hills and hide? Did they go to other cities where it's safer? You know, what did they do? You know what I mean? I'm taking it that a lot of them took off. You know what I mean? And to find safer places to stay, to protect the children and stuff like that. So I'm assuming that would happen. I wonder if there are stories about like a woman who went through that. These days, you get a lot of stories about that because we have the internet and we have, all this stuff going on. You could get stories about that. But back then, who told those people's stories? Because we know for a fact that the people who conquer them ain't going to tell their story.
Deep in the eastern territories of the Dacian kingdom, a plan was brewing beyond the watchful radar of Rome. It appears Trajan was not the only one preparing for a war in the previous years. Decebalus also had been secretly assembling an invasion of his own, led by 20,000 Dacians, together with Basternae, Greeks from Tyras and Olbia, and Roxolani Sarmatians, under their king, Sussegus. In total, the allies formed a combined army almost 90,000 strong, and were waiting for an opportunity to wreak havoc on the province of Moesia Inferior, whose governor Liberius was absent with most of the provincial army. Only a meager force of less than 5,000 auxiliaries plus parts of the Roman fleets of Pontus, Moesia, and Ravenna were left to guard it. The signal to invade finally presented itself in early winter that year, when due to harsh conditions, the Danube River froze, once again bridging the gap between its banks. In what must have been a terribly rude awakening, Roman forces on the mouth of the Danube were hit by the wave of enemy onslaughts. Out of nowhere, tens of thousands of invaders crossed the Danube and began unleashing chaos on the defenseless Roman province. The Roman fleets, after fighting a series of desperate delaying actions, were fleeing for their lives. The large cities of Histria, Tomis, and Calatus were besieged, along with dozens of fortified positions along the Danube. Contrary to propaganda on Trajan's column, Dacian forces had some understanding of siege warfare and could even field a small number of artillery pieces, which would be useful in them overrunning dozens of Roman positions, which were falling like dominoes. The feared Sarmatian cavalry, clad in armor, scattered to the four winds and ravaged everything in their path. Even the mighty fortress of Novae, headquarters of the 1st Italica Legion, was now under siege by a large Dacian force. In a desperate defense, the outnumbered Roman garrison managed to repel the Dacian assaults for now. The war between the king and the emperor was thus far nothing but a game of chess. Decebalus's false peace treaty requests were successful in hiding his true strength and motives, keeping the Romans focused on one side of the board. And Trajan just realized he greatly underestimated his opponent's resources and allies. He was not just fighting the Dacians, but a large anti-Roman coalition masterminded by Decebalus. For this mistake, he risked blundering an entire province over to the enemy. And worst of all, if the Dacians reached the Iron Gates, they threatened to sever his armies from their supply lines, and effectively cut off and starve the Roman juggernaut in foreign territory in the middle of winter. Now it was Trajan's turn to move, and he was running out of time. Part 3 of the Dacian Wars is currently in the making, and we're trying...
Wow. This is a riveting storytelling here. The battles and stuff sort of fascinates me, but I think I'm more fascinated by the everyday lives of people then. That would give such an insight into human psyche during wars and stuff. You know what I mean? And I'm assuming that they felt the same way that anybody else who's been in war in any time in history, they felt that way. Especially if you're just sitting there waiting for all these forces to come at you, you know what I mean? And you know it's inevitable. It's going to happen, it's coming. So imagine being in the middle and they're coming from all sides and you have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. That's going to be some debilitating fear right there. And they would just go scotch out all the way through those places too, man. They don't, they, you know, putting heads on sticks and stuff like that. That's just some crazy stuff there. I really don't think a modern military guy could really stomach that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And it may seem barbaric, but at the time, that's what they did. It was wrong on all sides. But, you know, it's different methods. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's the same thing. They just do it differently because it's the same outcome. I hope you guys learn a little something from this and all of that. Comment in the comment section about what we learn in here. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I've kind of speechless from all of this history that's coming up there and all these battles and wars and stuff. I'm probably going to dream about it tonight. But hope you guys are having a great day. You know, drop a like on the video, share the video, and like I said, comment as usual. In the meantime, let's take care of each other, all right? Let's try to bring some peace and love into this world.